Okay, so we have our 2019 Chevy 3-inch front, 6-inch back, upper and lower control arms in front, full 6-inch in the rear. We do not have the lifting shackle on it. We just have a flip kit, a notch kit, and shock relocator, and that's it. So what we're going to do today is give you a glimpse and show you how to do the front. We obviously have our aftermarket DJM 3-inch kit on it, and we're going to have a little fun today because what we did a while ago is we made a 4-inch set of control arms for it. So now we're going to see if we can lower this thing 4 inches and really get it to work as good as the 3-inch. The 3-inch works wonderfully. We've punished this truck, tested and tested and tested it. It has not moved alignment one bit. It drives great. It rides pretty good. It's still a truck. And we're going to go ahead and rack it now and show you how we do it. Okay, so the very first thing we have to do is we have to take the sway bar off. The sway bar is going to come off and it's going to stay off until after it's aligned. So if we can take a look at this bolt, I don't think there's any way we can get this bolt tight enough, especially with my impact with a sway bar on it. That's the reason it's going to stay off until we align it. So this is the last thing that's going to go back on. First thing off, last thing on. So we're going to go ahead and take it off. Okay. We have to switch to a 10 with an extension. So get somebody to help you with this because I already dropped it trying to do it myself. And bent one of the sway bar end links. Not too big a deal. And the sway bar is off. I'm going to take the tie rod off. Give it a tap here. So, next thing is the strut. They gave us some obstacles here. The best thing we found to get the strut off with is our ratcheting 18 millimeter. We try to get to it from the top. And there's no way to get to it from the top. So we just start wrenching. One of the big things about this 4-inch kit is whether we're going to make contact with the inner fender well. Time will tell. We'll test it. If it's good, you'll get it if you want it. If it was my personal truck, I'd run the 3-inch on it. I think 3.6 works really good. 3.5 will be really good if you have a toolbox, snug top lid, something like that on it. That's really a good one. One thing about this, the strut can easily be removed. without even touching the control arms. Now this third strut bolt is the one that's not fun. And getting in there, we can get in there, it's just going to take a while. Still isn't on. Put some pressure on it. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's good. Okay, now the two lower bolts. Okay, so now we can remove the strut. If you could lower the control arm down. Is it down all the way? Okay, here it comes. And now we can set this aside for a while. Of course, we're using the stock strut. Don't replace the strut. Try it with the original. What we're going to do on this is we're always going to leave the control arm on because we have all these brake line wires here, and we don't need to, so we're not going to mess around with it. So we're going to go ahead and take our brake line bracket off. Yours will be similar, the original will be similar. And you can see we've really used this piece here. So we've given it a really, really good workout. So now you can see why we had to take the strut out, because you can't get to these bolts with the strut in. So, Tony?
Yes, sir.
Could we go ahead and jack this up again? Up. Up. Okay, that's good. Okay, so the original one does not have a cotter pin on it. So I don't want to be anywhere close to this brake line. I don't want to damage it. And that worries me a little bit, especially it just took me about 10 seconds to take that off. So we're gonna pull it. I don't want to be close to this thing. But if you do disconnect this, GM will send you a nice little email saying that you've disconnected it. So let's see if I can do this. I can loosen this up with a wrench. You have steel ball joints, you have an aluminum spindle, which can be a problem. Now, if I get lucky, we're going to be able to get this ball joint off. We're not going to get lucky.
Take some of the pressure off of it too.
Now, this is a little less violent way to do it. And we shall just see. So, wrench. So, I just bought this from Amazon. And let's see if it works. That's all we can do, is just see if it works. Pressure it up here and see if it pops this ball joint, because with these aluminum spindles, this has been a big problem for us. How about that? Amazon.com, that worked. And you see how hard that came out, and that wasn't tightened that much. The bottom one's worse. So, I also put anti-seize on this ball joint because of the aluminum has been a problem all along with this. And not that having a nice light aluminum spindle is bad, but the ball joints are hard to take out. So beware, especially if you're trying to use other than control arms on it. That may be a big problem for you. So as you can see, the movement of our control arms are absolutely smooth. That's because of the twin tube design. We're going to go ahead and put this one on, put our new control arm on, and we're going to get in there with an air ratchet and get this thing off. Okay, so let's get these bolts out and get this control arms off. Okay, we're going to yank this thing off, leaving the spindle completely intact. We don't need to take it off the truck. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to temporarily put this one in. And I want to get some grease in this ball joint. This boot is very sealed.
Full, that's why.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Zerk fitting out. I'm going to replace it with this plug. So I don't want a chance of this Zerk fitting sticking up. And popping through my inner liner. So the next thing I want to do before we put this thing back on is I want to use some assembly lube on this. And it's no more than standard silicone paste. And we're going to make it so this thing is really good on the installation. And of course, it doesn't take much. And you can still grease them anytime you want, but we're going to use assembly lube for our initial installation. And so what's going to happen is we just demonstrated we have a twin tube on this. We have an inner and outer tube. The inner tube's longer than the outer tube. And so what this control arm is going to do, it's going to clamp and it's going to rotate between these two tubes. On this truck is especially, we used to get away with maybe no inner tube on the earlier models, but this truck has no receiver. Yeah, we'll go ahead and put the control arm back on and we'll show you what we've done. Most of the earlier model trucks had a receiver. They'd have another piece of metal here. The control arm used to fit in between the two pieces of metal. Well, they eliminated that, and that's your mount. So if that control arm can't move freely and you can't tighten it up completely, you're going to have some problems. And so our twin tube is going to clamp here. The control arm is going to freely move, and you don't have this receiver to help you over on this other side like the early model trucks had. So they just made a change. Plus, we cleaned this before we did this, so we didn't have to deal with this sealant here, which is not nice to work around, but we want that cleared out here, so we cleared it out here. And we're going to go ahead and put this thing back on again. I can't see it, Tony.
I can't either. That's why I'm trying to work around.
I get it. So your kit comes with 4 washers for the upper control arms. Here they are installed, and they go on the outside of the bushings on the upper control arm. Very simple. The nut you can tighten up as much as you want. And let's say 125 pounds on this. Use some blue Loctite along with nylocks. So we want to make sure they stay put. So you want to install the washer right here, and away you go. What we want to do is really tighten these down. So now we're tight, but you see how smoothly that control arm is, and that's because of your twin tube sleeves. Yeah, it's a half 20, so it'd be a 3/4. So And that's nice and tight. You saw how tight the other one is, lining up the cotter pin. And we'll go ahead and install the cotter pin so we don't forget. And where it landed up. We're gonna have to pull that thing through. Okay, so we know that's not coming out. And it's probably be a really good time to put our brake lines back together again. And so it's all stock except for this upper brake line. We're going to go ahead and finish that installation now, make it nice and snug. Get all our wirings just like original. Okay, that's very tight. All the brake lines look good. Upper's complete. And now it's time to have fun with this lower. Every time we've done this, this lower ball joint has been an absolute bugger. So, and I pretty much tell you right now, it's not coming off easy. So we'll get to work and see if we can get it off of here. Okay, so this goes under the topic, things always don't work out the way you expect. And when removing the control arm yesterday, we ran into a problem, is the ball joint wouldn't separate. All three of the other ball joints separated no problem, but this one would not separate. So we tried our ball joint separator, which we modified a little bit. To make this fit, we had to cut the stem of the ball joint off a little bit. We're not worried about ruining the ball joint because the kit comes with a brand new ball joint. So you don't have to worry about that. Various other ways to try to get the ball joint off. In the past, a lot of times you were to be able to take your mallet and just smack that spindle, and the Morse taper on the ball joint would just let loose. You want to make sure you have your nut loosely on the ball joint in case it does let loose. So then we tried our pickle fork, which usually works. This one's been modified because the ball joint's so large, your normal pickle fork won't work on it. So you take your pickle fork, you get it underneath the boot. We took an extra precaution where we cut the boot completely off so we'd have metal to metal contact to get the ball joint to separate. Still wouldn't separate. So what we had to do, which took a little longer, is we had to remove the caliper, remove the rotor, remove the hub, and take the spindle out with the control arm attached. And then we took our cutoff wheel and we cut it away from the control arm. It's a lot more work, but you just have to stay calm when this stuff happens. Again, you got an aluminum ball joint, you got a steel ball joint and aluminum spindle. And they have a tendency to just not want to come apart. Where you have a standard Morse taper, there's no scarring on the ball joint, but it just wouldn't come out. So we didn't want to damage the spindle. That would have made things even worse. So we took our cutoff wheel and we actually cut the stud off the ball joint, still attached to the spindle. We took it inside to our H-frame press, did a really careful setup to press this out of the spindle, and we applied some pretty good pressure, and finally it popped out and did no damage to that spindle. So that worked out good. But sometimes this stuff happens. On this newer truck, the ball joints are a lot harder to separate than on the older trucks, especially with a ductile spindle. So be aware and don't freak out and don't damage the spindle at all costs. The ball joints aren't very much money. Damage the ball joints, cut them up, whatever you have to. The ball joints aren't nearly as much as replacing that spindle. So we don't want to go so far as to have any chance of damaging the spindle. So that's what we had to do. Cost us a little bit of delay, but here we go again. Let's go ahead and get that control arm on and get moving. Okay, so here's our prototype for the 4-inch drop. 3-inch drop worked well. We don't know how the 4-inch drop is going to work, but we're going to go ahead and try it. So we have it ready to go. We had some problems getting the old ball joint out on the lower. Aluminum spindles with a steel ball joint, they can get stuck pretty good and they're hard to get out. And there's not a lot of alternatives if you don't want to rip the boot. In fact, there's really not many alternatives if you don't want to rip the boot. So with this kit, it comes with a new ball joint. So if you have to rip the boot, rip it, get the ball joint off, and move on. So again, this has larger bushings, has larger twin tube sleeves. We call these stay puts because this thing's got to stay put. And when you tighten this thing up, it not only has to rotate smoothly, but it also has to stay, because if it moves, you'll be out of alignment and that'll ruin your day and it can't move. So you can really, really tighten these up. You can go 125, 150 pounds on them. Make sure they don't come out of alignment. Again, we're going to use our silicone assembly grease on them again. Go ahead and put that guy in there. It fits nice and tight. And when we tighten this thing down, after we get our final alignment on it, it will not move. And we've completely punished these and botted them 100 times, and it does not come out of alignment. So that's what you want. If you had a single tube, you'd impact the bushing so badly that it's either going to tear the bushings apart or come out of alignment. So that being said, this is a completely new design. It's stronger, and this maintains your turning radius. A lot of complaints is bad turning radiuses, and we want to give you the original turning radius. That's how the truck was built. And so when you go in a cul-de-sac and you make a cul-de-sac turn, right through the cul-de-sac, right out, just like we did originally. So let's go ahead and mount it. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to use a washer, because again, we have a aluminum spindle, and we want to use a 5/8 washer so it doesn't impact the spindle in any way. So you got a new boot, you got a new ball joint. We're ready to install. Okay, so we have a problem. We broke a pin. These pins are really easy to break, so be careful. If you use a combination wrench and you happen to come up this way, it'll bust it right off. So here's your busted pin. And of course, we got a fix for it. Here's your alignment cam repair kit. So we're just going to repair it. So here's our busted pin. We're going to come in with our special stainless steel bolt that's been machined. We're going to come in with our flat washer that's 0.030, and then our machined shoulder. So this does not fit flush, this fits almost flush. And when you tighten this thing down, you shouldn't have any problem clearing the bushings at all. You're going to tighten that thing down good, and we can keep on going. So that pin is stronger than the original pins. And so now we can install the control arm. We're going to go install the ball joint first. We're going to go ahead and put our washer on, because remember, it's aluminum, and so you got a steel nut, steel ball joint, and it's good to have a washer underneath there. It certainly won't hurt anything. Okay, so nothing's going to come apart now. We can just take it and spin it around. Pull the thing up. Fits nice and tight. I'm going to put a jack underneath it. Okay. And let's remember, we don't want to damage these pins. So we want to get it on our pins. And remember, it's really easy to damage these pins. So we'll get our nuts started. And remember, if you're on here with an open end, you got to watch this pin, because if you turn it there, you'll end up busting that pin off. So be really careful. You can see an example here. If I move this, it's going to break that pin off. Okay, so what I want to do is, I know I'm going to need positive, and so I pulled the control arm in quite a bit. I'm going to tighten it down, not a bunch, but enough so it doesn't move. So we're still going to need to align. So now all we have to do is put the strut in. Okay, so we're going to do it exactly the way it came off, and we're going to put the bottom bolts on, and then we're going to tighten the top ones up. Makes it much easier to align. So we'll just snug these up. Okay, at least they're snug. We'll go ahead and finish tightening those later. Okay, so the old ball joint needs to be tightened up. We're going to watch how tight we tighten this ball joint. We're going to be careful of over tightening this ball joint, because you may end up in the same problems we have, where it's going to be really, really hard to get out. Has an eye lock on it. So that's where I'm going to go on that nut, because we're going to be changing these control arms out again, and we want to check our swing. So right from stop to stop, no problem. That gives us our turning radius, and that's just fine. So we're gonna be assured of a good turning radius. And all these flange bolts, you notice that actually has a washer on it. That's why we used one on the lower. So you're dealing with aluminum here. So we want to make sure nothing falls off, but also you don't want it over tightened, or you'll never get these ball joints out. So we've repaired our alignment pin. You can see there, that took no time at all. We didn't have to weld it back on again. We got our uppers on. All we have to do is tighten down the strut on the top. So here we are with the 4-inch front kit installed. I've been driving a few days. Spoiler hits sometimes. I'm also able to scuff the inner fender wells with the tires, which we changed to a 275/50/20. We're using 20-inch original wheels. So that's, when you get a truck this low, that's part of the downside. You got to drive it like a lower truck. With the 3-inch control arms, you can just drive the truck. You don't have to worry about it too much. But 4 inches, we're getting down there pretty good, so expect that. So the control arm is completely installed. Of course, this is a prototype. It will change a little bit, but you notice it's very compact. It does not have the old, what we called bucket on it. It's very flat. The upper control arms allow us to put a good alignment on at 0-degree camber, 4.8 caster, which this particular 19 truck loves caster. So don't be worried about going quite a bit above 4 degrees, it'll drive fantastic. And sway bars back on. That's the last thing, of course, we put on. And so now we're going to test out at a full 4.6 drop. Okay, so we got our 19 lowered, full 4.6. And remember when we started, we had a 3.6 on it. You could do a 3.5. A little more drivable than the 4.6. Of course, we have our 07 with exactly the same amount of drop, 235 50 20s, where the 19 has 245 50s. And so you can get a good comparison in between the two drops. The 19 drives fantastic, but we do have, you have to drive it like a lowered truck. You can't drive it like a stock truck because it is low. And thank you for watching, and enjoy.